Hello, welcome back if you've been here before. If not, hi, my name is David. This is my video where I talk about my thoughts, ideas, and theories regarding the last 4 episodes of the Magnus Protocol. I am making these videos as the episodes come out, so I do not know what's going to happen in episodes 22 to 24. 21 just came out today, and I was really excited about it because we've just come out of this hiatus, and I wanted to get my own raw idea of what the story is about, what the plot is about, the mystery, from what I glean from the story itself without any sort of outside help. Like, even my boyfriend's trying to put out some theories, and I'm like, shh, let me make this video first. This is going to be where I film today. I always try to mix it up a bit to where I film. So this is my shelf of importance. These are my number one or the best books of that I've ever read. And this is my boyfriend's honorary shelf as well. It used to be my roommate's, but she moved away, and so now my boyfriend plays in here. And here, this little space, we have a little tiger Lego tiger. Yeah, that I make from where is it? This 12-in-1 rebuild kit that I have fun with. That's just gonna be a placeholder for now while we get another something there as well. But yeah, so if you want to take a look at these books, I highly recommend all of them because they are my top, I don't even know how many there are, favorite books here. Once again, this is my notebook. I do not have any new stickers. I need to get new stickers. I want new stickers. It's been such a long time since I had this book in my hands because of the long ass hiatus that we had. This was a shorter hiatus than the last hiatus, but it felt longer for me for some reason. But now episode 21 is finally here, and it is a doozy, I'll tell you. Okay? So, also a small little pedantic thing, when I would write my notes for every episode, I would write it as statement notes, because that's what the episodes quote unquote were in Magnus Archives statements. But these are cases, so case notes. Episode 21, Breaking Ground. CAT2 RBC 4254. The rest of the code are the dates that I don't read out. The description is architecture parentheses landmark dash slash dash corruption parentheses entropy. Just a refresher, categories 1 through 3 are different types of classification that the episodes delineate. Category 1 is an agent, that is an altered person, for example, Needles, or Mr. Bonzo, or Ink 50. Category 2 is a subject, that is an altered space, such as the service station, the garden, the dome. We'll talk about the dome. Category 3 is a catalyst, such as an altered item, such as the dice, the violin, or Ink 50's tattoos. So this episode's category is category 2, which is subject, which is the dome. So that's a CAT number. And then follows is R, and then a string of letters, usually 1 or 2 letters. And that just means rank BC. But I do not yet know what ranks mean yet. So for now, it's just going to be a question mark as to what that means. However, the 4 numbers following the CAT number are letters is the DPHW, which stands for death, pain, helplessness, and weird. So they're scoring the level of death, pain, helplessness, and weird in each of the cases. Death is 4, pain is 2, helplessness is 5, and weird is 4. The date of the event was January 4th, 1998, and the date of the categorization is April 12th, 2024. In real life, the author of this episode is Jonathan Sims. This aired July 11th, 2024. Brief summary, because of how intricate the episodes are going to become, I don't see the brief summary becoming very relevant in the future, but I'm still going to have it just in case. So, brief summary, the Magnus Institute Dome That's not correct, but this is the best way to remember it. And Gwen's escape. And the possible entities here, I just highlight the extinction, but there's some here as well that I'd like to talk about briefly. But yes, the possible entities here are the extinction. In scene 1, something to note as well, this episode occurs around the same day as the previous episode. I'd like to say maybe a few hours after Sam and Celia and Alice had their conversation, considering that that night is when Gwen meets with Ink 5 Ol, which is what happens later in the episode. And so I would like to say maybe it's like an hour or two after that conversation. And so Sam and Celia are like talking to each other. It's late at night and it's raining. And they talk about how like close they've gotten together. Celia's like, yeah, I mean, researching evil stuff kind of brings people together. And maybe they talk about maybe quitting, which is an interesting detail because people in the Magnus Institute, in the Magnus archives, could not quit, but here they're like contemplating it and they decide against it, but it's not yet like, I don't know if it's like they can't quit, but it's like they're not gonna quit, you know? And Sam doesn't want to disappoint his parents by working as a cashier because he has really overbearing parents. Have we met them? No, we've heard of them. I wonder if we will. Celia says that she cannot quit at all. She can't afford to because she has a complicated immigration status. And Sam seems to like understand. And she says that if she were to go back to her quote unquote home country, she could not take Jack with her. And staying here in this country is it's going to be harder for her, and so it's very complicated, her situation. And Sam says that if she needs anything, just let him know and he will help her, and she really really appreciates it. In scene 2, we begin with Chester slash John reading out a letter of Mr. Leonardo Kennings, who is a co-treasurer of the Magnus Institute, sending a letter to his other institute colleagues. And this is regards about Dr. Welling's calculations. And so I'll talk about it a little later, but I was under the impression that the Magnus Institute was building a dome, which is the Millennium Experience. I was under the impression of that, and so that's just incorrect, but for my notes for now, that's what I was thinking about. And so I added some like side notes to like try to correct it, but the notes that I'm writing right now are with me under the impression that the Magnus Institute was the head creators of the dome. But anyways, Dr. Welling says that the dome has transmutative properties and can harness power. It's called the Millennium Exhibition. He doesn't support the project for the dome building in the beginning of the new millennia. Of course, this is wrong. He's talking about the experiment that they want to do, but they know that the dome is being built for the new millennia. But he doesn't support the project being done for the new millennia, as he says that the date should be more astrological versus cultural, because the Gregorian calendar is the most popular one, but like there are other cultures that don't use the Gregorian calendar, so that might put a wrench in their plans. He also like talks about I didn't write it down, but he talks about how I don't think it'd be good to throw away astrology in the face of their quote great work like we have with Christianity. And so what he's saying there, what I'm interpreting, what he's saying there is that like we've thrown God out of our equation for quote the great work, which is entity stuff. Yeah, it's entity stuff. He said, listen, I can deal with not being Christians, but I think we should still be interested in astrology, which is hilarious considering they're academic researchers. And hey, we know that astrology is a pseudoscience, right? That has no basis in real life. And pseudosciences are fake sciences that have no way to be proved or disproved. So that's fun that the Magnus Institute is dealing with astrology now. But he like acquiesces and says, listen, I've already voiced my opinions. but I'd rather we be more unified for the quote great work that's more important than being than voicing dissent and causing schism. Like, we need to be unified for this thing to move successfully. He says that Dr. Welling's calculations say there is balance within the dome, and the like significance of the dome, but Cannings disagrees and sees that there is more terror than joy. Like, Wellings believed that the terror of what's going to come to the future is going to be balanced by the joy of like the present and what possible possibilities are there, in the future. But Kenny is like, I don't think so, because he says that there's been a cultural feeling of stagnation since the fall of the USSR. The majority of the populace doesn't look favorably upon the dome. The dome will be seen as a monument for stagnation, which is not good for their great work. Because of his worries for the dome, he decides to use his resources to go look at the construction area of the dome. And he mentions that it's in a peninsula in London. And he says that the soil has too much toxin in it, as there used to be a gas works there that seemed to have polluted the environment at that point. So he visits the construction site and sees the really bad conditions for the workers there. And while talking with the foreman, he asks the foreman, how long will the dome stay up, structurally? And the foreman says, you never know what's coming in terms of the future, which is ominous. And he even says, like, the way he said it was like creepy. He doesn't say that, but like basically means that. And while he's in the construction site, Kennings witnesses a Pakistani man like entranced by like a mixer, and all of a sudden he like leaves the mixer and goes to like a ditch and stares at a wall. He says he's just staring there for a bit, and then all of a sudden, like, an older version of the man, like maybe 40-50 years old, digs his way out from the wall, grabs the man, and pulls him into the wall mud that the old man came out of, and the guy disappears, and it's presumed that he died. And Kenning was like, we're gonna ignore that, and he leaves the construction site. And he says to the colleagues that the institute should not be part of the dome construction. So this is when I realized, oh, I'm wrong. The institute was not building the dome. The institute wanted to be part of the dome after constructed. He wants the institute wanted to use the millennia for their grand experiment, quote unquote. But Kennings is arguing for it not to be done within the dome, which is a lot more simpler than what I thought it was going to be. I thought that they were building this dome. The institute was building this dome for the ritual, whatever ritual it is. But no, it's not that. It's that the dome is being built anyways. The Magnus Institute, Dr. Wellings, says that, hey, we should do our grand ritual within the dome when the millennia comes around, and that's when we can do our great work. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense as to why he's writing these letters. Canning said the site is a hostile location, and it represents a hopeless future, and ultimately is not a good place for their grand ritual. And the episode ends, or statement ends, actually, sorry. The case ends, not the statement, case. In scene 3, we find out that Alice listens to that, and she speaks to FR3D1 and says she knows it wants Sam to listen to it, to have read this case, and so she removes it from the case. She's like, I know what you're doing. I'm gonna make sure he doesn't listen to this. And she believes in Colin and begins questioning what the computer wants to do. Like we saw before, that Colin was like, the computers are doing something. And I do believe that Colin and now Alice don't think that something supernatural is occurring. I think that they are just thinking that something mundane-ish is happening, like a conspiracy thing. I don't think they believe it's supernatural at all, but it's something between. And like Alice is fully not sure exactly, but she does believe that Colin is correct in thinking that the computers have a mind of their own. Lena appears all of a sudden, interrupts, and she tells Alice to not use Sam's computer. Like she asks Alice, "What are you doing in Sam's computer?" And Alice is very easily able to like talk around what she was doing. Every time she lied, we heard a little glitch in the sound, and it was very like fun, honestly, to hear her successfully talk around Lena and also hear the lies that are confirmed by the recording itself. She also asked Lena something, and we hear one lie from Lena, which I believe it was, "Don't you care about anyone else?" And she says, "Yes," and that's a lie, or she says, "No," and that's a lie. One of those two. But we hear one lie from Lena, which is interesting, and we can see that she is not immune to the lie detector recording. Alice asks where Colin is, and like we need him to help. And Lena sort of like rebuffs her, and she's like, "It looks like we've been working even better since Colin left, so we're fine." And then Lena asks where Gwen is, if Alice has seen her, and Alice hasn't, and she's like, "Well, she hasn't come back from her assignment, but oh well," and she leaves. Alice is worried that Lena's worried, and she turns to the computer and she's like, "What did you do?" Blaming the computer. The computer also makes like a monk sound, as if it's responding to her, which I found kind of funny. And that was the last funny thing that happened, because in scene 4, we find Gwen running away from Ink50, and we hear this recording on her phone, which is where we heard her last time in episode 20. Gwen's phone falls into a puddle, and then she like picks it up and tries to call someone. It's not working, and she tries to escape and finds a bystander who is voiced by Callum Doherty. The bystander tries to help, but Inksoul makes his barbed wire tattoo, I guess, turn into real barbed wire, or at least cut him in the way real barbed wire would be, and so he dies, killed by Ink50. And Gwen runs away and drops her phone again, and we hear Ink50. They're like laughing, and they're like, "How? I'm gonna paint you. I'm gonna use you as my canvas." And it's really fun when Gwen's phone falls into the puddle and just dies. And then scene 5, we hear a recorder turn on. Click on. And that's really important, because anytime a recorder turns on, something really bad is going to happen. The last time we saw it happen was in episode 10, Saturday night, when Sam and Alice are in the United Institute ruins, and we hear a tape recorder turn on, and error comes out of the Institute without them knowing. And then again in episode 15, there is a moment where Alice is walking through an alleyway after going to her brother's performance, and we hear a tape recorder turn on, and it is the drowned woman speaking something about her being drowned. So this is there might be other moments where the tape recorders turn on, but this is a really important moment because a tape recorder turns on. We hear Gwen running away, and she like bumps into a fence, and then all of a sudden Ink appears, and they take her arm and start tattooing her. And in like the fear of that, all of a sudden Gwen begins to just spout out something about her past, of her childhood. And it's about a childhood shed with like sharp objects in there, and she's just talking about it, and that all startles Ink from doing anything more to her arm. And all of a sudden, Error appears, voiced by Beth Erie, like, and it's so hard to understand what they're saying, what it is saying, and it is like overlapping voices with like other whispering things, and it's like it says mine in terms of, I guess, Gwen, and we see Gwen talking about like maggots in the shed from like a dead fox. It looks to be like she is recounting a terrifying moment in her past. And Ink and Error begin arguing over Gwen. And so Ink like releases Gwen, and she runs away, still babbling. And then like Error stays and sort of talks with Ink briefly, very briefly. And Error says that there is more elsewhere and leaves. It's also important to note that Ink describes Error as an old git. And then as Error leaves, Ink is like, hey, you drop this, and picks up the recorder. And then I didn't understand what it was when I was listening to it, but Ink picks up the recorder, and apparently it bites them, and they're like, ah, motherfuck! And the episode ends there when the recorder shuts off. The sound of it, honestly, I would not have ever thought that the recorder bit into them. But when I was reading it in the transcript, it was actual jump scare. Like I screamed actually. I was like, ah. And yeah, so with the ending, we turn to our notes. I actually don't have that many notes. Because most of the things are small little details, but these are things that are important to say at least. Celia's immigration status is her way of not lying to Sam. I feel like she truly does care for Sam and doesn't want to lie to him. And so she says the closest thing that is true, but still not the full picture, which is her immigration status, because she's not from this UK. She's from a different UK, from the Magnus archives, because Magnus archives and Magnus protocol are from two separate worlds, dimensions, etc. And that also sort of confirms, I don't know if this was in question for me or not, but now it's confirmed that Jack, Celia's 1-year-old son, I was 1-year-old son, is from the OIAR universe, world, dimension, and not from the archives universe, world, dimension. The Millennium Dome itself was built in 1997 to 1999 in Greenwich Peninsula, which was a peninsula that was polluted from gasworks and then was reclaimed to build the dome. And the Magnus Institute was considering taking part in the Millennium experience in 2000, the year 2000, to celebrate the turn of millennium. And so it looks like the grand ritual was stopped by Starkwall eventually. Like this is the grand, like Magnus Institute, was burned down in 1999, and they were planning to do a grand ritual for the great work in 2000. And that totally makes sense with what we learned about Starkwell and the protocol, and how the Starkwell burned things down, and how the protocol is supposed to burn things down to avoid bad things from happening, as we saw from Isaac Newton. So that makes sense. It makes total sense that this is the grand ritual that was burnt down for the protocol. Some would say the Magnus protocol. Kennings may have been successful in turning the Magnus Institute away from the dome, specifically because it's not mentioned that the dome was burnt down. It was the Magnus archives itself burnt down. So, like, we have no way of knowing if the dome is still up or not in the OIAR universe. However, we know that the Magnus Institute is no longer burnt down, and they would have burnt out the dome if that was the location for the protocol itself. So it seems he was successful in his letters, especially because like the way he kept hedging around the power and like the calculations Dr. Wellington was doing, the great ritual. Obviously, they know about maybe not Smirks 14 entities taxonomy, but definitely about horrifying powers. And in terms of Smirks 14, the entities present here likely are the extinction, with maybe some buried in spiral, but I think that tends to be more like thematic, less than the entity itself being there. But I do think it's the extinction because there's a heavy emphasis on poison and toxins and pollutions, especially because extinction deals with the leftover of what humanity does. And there's fears about the future as well. The foreman says you never know what's coming, and if that's not an extinction like line, then I don't know what it is. And also because he's talking about how tainted the dome is with this stagnation, this fear of the future. It sort of ties into Peter Lucas's reasoning for why the extinction needs to be stopped from emerging before like a grand ritual for the extinction occurs to destroy the world. It makes sense that Kennings in this point would know maybe about not about the extinction as a name, but definitely as like power and instinct, that if the extinction was part of the grand ritual, which don't know what they were trying to do with the grand ritual, but the extinction could make very bad stuff happen because Peter Lucas, as I said before, thought that the extinction would destroy the world. And so the parallel sort of agreements here make me truly think that the extinction, at least Smirk's 14 version of the extinction, is here in some way or form, and that Kennings saw that and was like, let's not deal with this part of the power, and let's deal with the ones that we know about that won't destroy the world wholeheartedly. And I just love the extinction and how it's depicted. Like after, like I was taking my boyfriend to work and we listened to this episode, and when I was driving back, I was like, let me just listen to my let me re-listen to the episodes like I've been doing, and I have them in a playlist, and I play them in random, and I put it to random. I was like, give me an extinction, give me an extinction. There's not that many to be chosen from, but just give me an extinction episode. And the first one that popped up was 144 Decrypted. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. I love the extinction. Alice listening to the statement, to the case, and making sure that Sam does not listen to it. Making sure that Sam doesn't get any ideas from this. Alice saying, I know you wanted him to read this. I'm not going to let this happen, etc. To me, is so good. That's so interesting that Alice would do that. And to me, that makes her an antagonist to Sam's story, which I remember when I first, started listening to the Magnus Protocol, I forgot that the synopsis was that two civil service workers, I think that's what they were, two government workers, Alice and Sam, start working at OIAR and learn about the horrors, etc. I had forgotten about that, and I was like, Sam's the main character here. And so Alice here is not only separating herself from Sam in the story, but also becoming an antagonist to his story because she is stopping him from like learning about the Magnus Institute, stopping him from doing the things that he wants. Yes, the things that he wants to do, yes, the things that he wants to do are bad, but he still wants to do that, which makes her an antagonist to his story. And I think that's an interesting conflict. And I don't see how Sam would find out about this unless FR3D1 tells him somehow. But Alice doing that is a great progression of character considering what happened last episode, and she's like not wanting to be dealing with this. She's taking an active role in stopping this from happening, and I love that about her character. I love, like, she has been so annoying and so self-centered, but it all makes sense. It all makes sense with her narrative and her want to be just surviving, and her doing that is so good to the story, and I'm so excited for what that's going to come out in the future. It's more or less confirmed, I'm going to say it's more or less confirmed, that Error, voiced by Beth Erie, she voiced the woman who witnessed the last feast, the great feast, one of those two, flesh ritual. That was Beth Erie. Don't think it's her. To me, more or less confirmed that Error is the person, is the thing, I'm going to just the thing, it is the reason behind the drowned woman and the lonely woman that we saw in episode 15 and episode 18? Yes, 18, I got that right. Because Gwen starts spouting out something about her past, and that seems very in line with the things that the drowned woman and the lonely woman were spouting out in those moments. The difference here, obviously, that Gwen is still alive and the two women are dead, but we still have some episodes to go, so we'll see exactly what that all means. Also, two things that I forgot to write down. Inc. 5 recognized Error? Question mark? The way that they were talking to them was like they knew about them. They knew about it. Or at least encountered them before. They weren't questioning them at all. They were like, this is mine, etc. They were not confused as to what was happening. And also, two, Ing 5 described them as an old git. And so to me, error means that whatever it is that Ing 5 saw is human presenting, at least. But because we've only experienced the error through tape recorder, that means it avoids being seen from like the tape recorder, or it avoids being seen from any other form of recording. I can totally see error being able to be seen normally by a recording, I guess, let's say an aspect of the eye, and not being seen by a tape recorder, which is, I guess, an aspect of the web. There's still, this is all pretty conjecture, but Ing 5 does name it as an old git, which means they're probably seeing an older person, but we're not hearing an older person. We're hearing overlapping whispers and scraggly voices and something that we cannot understand, which is exciting. And Gwen survives, thankfully. And I thought at first Ing 5 died, but I think they just got bitten by the tape recorder, and they just dropped it, and that was it. It's like just like a bite, and then they drop it. So I don't think they actually died then. I thought they did, but I don't think they did. Does that mean the tape recorder is alive? Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next episode. I forgot if I did a transition. Hello, we are back. I feel like the lighting is a little different. I didn't change anything, but I feel like the lighting's a little different, but oh well. Hi, welcome back. This is episode 22. Do I have any updates in between? What was that? Do I have any updates between last episode and now? Not really. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to replace little Lion Man, so he's going to be there for the interim. So yeah, episode 22, Mixed Signals, CAT13RBC4488. The description is experiment, parentheses, brain, // imprisonment, parentheses, existential. So category 1 is agent, so Herr Schmidt, and category 3 is a catalyst. I'll say for now probably the telegram or the telegraph, one of those two. It's one of those two. And the rank is BC. The DPHW, death 4, pain 4, helplessness 8, weird 8. The date of the event happened December 14th, 1924, and the date of the categorization is April 15th, 2024. The author of this episode was Alexander J. Newell. This aired July 18th, 2024. Brief summary: brain taps into entities? Something? And the entities, possible entities, are none/all. Obviously, I'll get into that. So in scene 1, we find Lena berating Gwen for running away from Ing 5 and Error. She calls it the Watching Figure, which is a cool name for Error, the Watching Figure. It's very vague, and it's very something that anyone else could say. So if they start calling it the Watching Figure, that sounds fun. Lena wants the contact details of the Watching Figure. At one point, she's like, there's 2 externals out there. They're not externals yet, not until they get hired. Lena's disappointed with Gwen, and Gwen's like, you're not going to get rid of me. And Lena's like, okay, listen. And she says that killing Gwen is more annoying than just firing her, but either way, she's only going to demote her. And Gwen gets to keep the title up until after the ministerial visit passes, just to maintain that everything's fine. In scene 2, we have Augustus / maybe Jonah Magnus, maybe, reading out a private collection record number 5876-3, which is the letter from Hans Berger to Dr. Richard Caton. It's an update on some research that Berger was doing, and he wanted some clarification on possible unusual side effects that Caton recorded from his experiments on. They gave the scientific names, and so I just translated to like normal. layman's terms, and it's cats, great apes, rabbits, and old world monkeys, primates. And Berger says that he's working on Herr Schmidt, who has a cranial deformity, and that gives them direct access to the duramater, yeah, above the occipital lobe. And the duramater specifically, I had to look it up, is a thing that's covering the brain. So that he's just saying that we are getting direct access to the brain here. The deformity allows for them to reach the brain easily. Berger mentions that in the past, Dr. Catan had suggested using silver for better conductivity. So this time they attached silver capillary electrometer to record electrical signals. And he has his assistant slash wife, Ursula, helping him. And he learned of Konstantin M. Bykov. I forgot to do research on him. I don't know who that man is. And I don't know if he's real. And his work on the, quote, hemispherical bridge, which claims is the center of yourself. And it's between the two halves of your brain. You know, there's a left and a right brain. So he says that in between that is the hemispherical bridge, where that's yourself. I don't know enough about brains to refute that, but I feel like that's wrong. And he says that if it was cut, as he observed in dogs, if it's cut, two separate brains exist within the body, and he experienced that in dogs. I don't know how he saw that. How do you measure that? And so Berger inserts silver wires into Schmidt and begins asking questions. The three main questions he asks are: imagine yourself, tell me of yourself, and what is it that you want? And it seems that these are sort of like the experiments that he's doing. I don't have a full grasp on in terms of what he's recording. It seems that he's trying to record like brain waves and stuff like that. And because of Konstantin M. Bykov's work, he's like, let me try this. When he asks the questions, the readings are very, very high. And so like they think that the equipment used to like monitor the brainwaves and stuff like that is just malfunctioning, and that's why it's getting like such wide data readings. And so they just cancel the experiment for today, and we'll come back the next day to like see if it fixes itself, or at least fix it and see if it works or whatever. And in the interim of that wait, Berger has the dream of like an ocean with a heart full of secrets in the ocean, and above the water are just radio signals that are like very weak, and they cannot reach the heart. And so he's like, I have an idea from that. And so he borrows a telegraph and he rearranges the sensors to make it work. He specifically notes that he doesn't know how he did it. He's like, yeah, I was working on it and I just made it so that it would work. I don't know how I did that. Which is like, Berger, you're a scientist. You should write that down. And so he asks the same questions to Herr Schmidt. And the telegraph is like languidly, like sort of like tap, 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 tap is what I understood it as. Not giving anything bigger than that. And so he talks about the way that he talks about his wife, Jesus Christ. But anyways, she's like preparing something. It's kind of slow. And in the interim, he says he gets like a flight of whimsy or something along those lines. And he begins to send the questions that he asks through the telegraph itself. Like instead of asking it, he like, I don't know Morse code, but that's what it thinks. I think that's how it sounds like. Yeah. And when he sends those questions through the telegraph, the brain telegraph connected to Herr Schmidt's brain answers rapidly and violently, and it seems like it's sending a message. And he does it for all three questions, and then it like the last one, I didn't write this down, but the last one like is really like violent tapping until like dies. I think the machine recorder stops working and starts smoking, and through it all, Ursula like gasps and like drops some stuff, and she's like scared and startled. She says, "Can you not hear it?" And he's like just confused about it. And right when she asks, "Can you not hear it?" Herr Schmidt begins to convulse. And he says it looks like as if he had like tetanus. And a part of Herr Schmidt's brain kind of just breaks off of him and falls to the ground, and Schmidt dies. So after that, the Burgers, what's his first name? Hans and Ursula Berger deal with the death. It's like they knew that they were doing experiments, so like his death is sad, but like not suspicious. It's like it's brain surgery. There's a chance of death. After like all of the hubbub of the death, he makes it sound like a big burden, which is great. After that finishes, he goes to the readings that he has. He recorded the message, the tapping that the telegraph sent. He finds responses from the brain ticker to be messages. And so when Ursula said, "Can you not hear it?" she was very proficient in, I'm guessing this is Morse code, unless they had like a slightly different messaging system with the telegraph, but she could listen and hear the telegraph and translate it on her own, while Hans Berger couldn't do that, which is why she was like, "Can you not hear it?" So she heard the responses raw from the telegraph. And like, I'll read them out, but like, I can just imagine in this like sort of small little lab with what's his face, Herr Schmidt, on they said that he was like talking and like active and stuff, so he was probably just like laid back, whatever, and they were working on his brain. You know how they sometimes keep brain surgery people awake so that they know it's working or whatever. That's what I imagine that they're doing to him. And then Ursula's just over there doing something, and the telegraph, I'm gonna say that this telegraph is right here, and the telegraph is just like here. And I can just imagine this like 1924 is this Victorian? This is not Victorian age, but like turn of the century. This is not even turn of the century. The Roaring 20s. This was after World War One. Lab, Dr. Lab, and it's just silent, lit by like small amounts of weak electricity. I can see this dark and gloomy night, and just, and it sounds as if someone is sending a telegraph message, which telegraph messages to me have a connotation of the war coming, or SOS, save our ship, or something along those lines. And I can only imagine how creepy it would sound hearing that message come from the brain and hearing it raw. Like, Hans Berger hears these messages and just reads them out, but Ursula heard them. She was scared about that because that sounds terrifying. So the questions are the same. Imagine yourself. And it responds with I am, I, me, I am me, we, I are we. We are. And the second question is, tell me of yourself. And it responds, we are, I am here alone, we are I alone, all alone, so alone together alone, nothing, no, alone. The last question is, what is it you want? And I would read it out. However, I do think that the voice actor for Augustus, I will get his name in a second, Tom Fearon, does an amazing job with this last response. So I'll just play him reading it out.
Question. What is it you want? Response. Help. Help we us. Alone. Help we. I help need. Help out. Help out. Need. Out, we, out, I, out, we, out, I, out, help, need, out,
Which is interesting, to say the least. And like I said before, imagining hearing that come straight raw from the telegraph in the like Roaring 20s post World War One lab from this woman, and she's the only one who could understand it. Terrifying. Love that. And so Hans Berger is like, yeah, I don't know what to make of this. So I wanted to see if you, Dr. Catan, because he's sending the letter to Dr. Catan, Catan, not Catan, Catan, if he experienced anything similar with the dogs and the monkeys and the rabbits that he used, because this is definitely really interesting. And he says he's probably not going to publish it anyways. He just wants to make sure that he's doing his due diligence to make sure that things are fine. Hans, things are not fine. In scene 3, I think it's implied that Sam just listens to this episode, to this statement, but I'm not fully sure about that. But anyways, Sam accuses Alice of tampering with her computer, and she does this thing where she's like, maybe it's just old and fucks up. Anyways, do you want some coffee? And then like that immediately alerts him, and he's like, you're bad at lying. What did you do? And Alice admits that she thinks that the computer is deliberately feeding into Sam's delusion. And Sam says Alice is just trying to control him again. And Sam asks why Alice is still here. And Alice says a handful of different things. And like among them is like Luke probably being a band doesn't pay that well. So she's practically trying to support him as well. It's easy money if you keep your head down. And she kind of gets a kick out of she likes being the only one that's sane. And then she says that like if Sam could handle it, she thought that they could do something. And Sam's like, what? And she's like, never mind, forget it. And she leaves. And Sam, well, no, this is before that, Sam thinks her doing this is connected to him dating Celia. And she just refutes him. And then she leaves. And like, this was like a big fight. But I feel like it could have been bigger, which means that there is definitely more fights to come. In scene 4, Sam finds Celia in the break room. Celia says that she prefers to stay out of it, and Sam still thinks that Alice is just a jealous ex. And Celia says, well, Celia was like, I found something about the Magnus Institute. And Sam's like, what is it? And she's like, are you sure? Are you going to be looking into the Magnus Institute? He's like, yes, I'm all in. And so she says these are names that are important to Magnus Institute, which burned down in 1999. And the two names are Jonathan Sims and Martin Blackwood. And Sam is like, who? Which I think is supposed to be played for laughs, but like it makes sense that he would not know these names. So that's just, yeah. Celia. Well, we'll get back to that because no time. Lena is dangerous. I don't know in what capacity, but I know that she is dangerous because I love the like quote, killing you would be easy but a hassle sort of energy that she has, and it feels very like Elias Bouchard / Jonah Magnus in Elias Bouchard coded core vibe. And I feel like I've seen this multiple times before in other sort of media, but I can't think of those right now. But it's sort of like the idea of like, yeah, I mean, I could kill you, but the paperwork, love that. Gwen may start freelancing. I'd love to see her freelance because that sounds like fun. And I had to look up what ministerial visit is, and because that seems to be like a UK or like British thing by itself. And it looks to be like a departmental oversight, like an audit, I want to say, or like a job look once over or something like that. I'm not fully sure, but that's what it sounds like. It definitely sounds like oversight from like higher departments of the OIAR. There is a big emphasis on silver here, which is we've seen multiple times in alchemy, which we've seen multiple times in the Magnus Protocol. Whether or not silver had an actual like effect, because like it read to me, if I wasn't reading into it, it read to me that the silver was just a thing that was like, hey, you should try that. It's a better conductor. But knowing Magnus Protocol and knowing its things with alchemy, I was like, okay, silver probably did something, but I can't be sure about that 100%. because I could 100% see the story moving along as it does without any mention of silver anyways. So we'll see what, if anything, comes out of that. So entities, none that are manifesting, but, and here we get into like two different readings of the statement. The first reading A, there was mention of like two brains in one body in one dog. And so it's possible to me in my mind for this kind of horror story that Berger like accessed the second person, quote unquote, question mark, in the brain. Like I and like we and alone could be like the consciousness within the brain, and it'd be like, so Hans Schmidt has his own consciousness, and the second consciousness that is there is probably not there, but it's still part of Schmidt, but it's not present in the body or something like that, and it tries to escape, which is the brain ripping out of its out of the cranial deformity. Think Malignant with I forget I think it was started with the J. I want to say it's Jacob, but that sounds wrong. The guy who is the brother in who was also a tumor. I never saw the movie. I only saw things about it. It sounded really good though. But like something like that, where it's like a second person in the brain. I think Malignant was specifically a second person in the body, but whatever. Second person in the brain that they access, and because they became like quote unquote sentient, they tried to get out of the brain and died and killed Schmidt along the way. Which that I can see, that makes sense for a horror story. However, one, it's not my favorite reading. That doesn't mean that it would not be a good story. I think that would be a very interesting story, but it's not my favorite reading of this statement, this case. And I can't really connect an entity to it. Maybe the spiral in terms of like brain stuff, but that feels very, very flimsy. So I can't really connect an entity to it. And the other reading of this case is B. If we draw an analogy, an analog between the dream of the ocean with the heart full of secrets and the radio waves, the ocean and the heart is humanity and our dimension, and the space without with just air and radio waves are the dread powers, and how they cannot penetrate our dimension where the heart is, aka people, humanity. And this is my favorite reading of it. It gets a little complex and kind of like starts jumping through some hoops, but these hoops are very close together, so it's easy to jump through them for me. But I think that Hans Berger, when he tapped into the brain of Herr Schmidt, he was able to contact the entity itself, which is insane. But I'll explain. So the I and the we reflect the duality of the fear entities and divisions, because we got in episode 200, Last Words, John doing his reading, or John being part of the I, and he's like, long ago there was fear, it was primal, and then it started splitting off because of the complexity of human brains. And so, and throughout all of Magnus Archives, it's always been described as fear, entity, dread, power is one. However, it is comprised of divisions that are taxonomical, aka human and flawed, aka Smirks 14. But there are still divisions naturally, as we see in like with the color allegory with Jerry Key. And so the I and the we, to me, reflects the where's my notes? Here we go. Reflects the singularity of the dread power and the multiplicity of it. The alone, to me, is probably them not being in our reality, and the out probably means that they want out of their location into ours, and it does the way that they basically yell out, need help, need out, feels desperation, and it could be desperation from desperate hunger. Maybe that's a little like extrapolating too much for me. And the brain ripping out is a consequence of the want to get out, and maybe a consequence of such concentration of consciousness affecting the brain. Because we know that the fear entity, the dread powers, are not conscious. They're not thinking except for the web, but the web is just an aspect of it. So it gets kind of muddled there. But they are fear. They are our fear. They're not thinking. They're not conscious. But the moment that like Hansberger attaches telegraph, he creates, if we're going to use the analogy of the dream, he creates a, I'm going to say, a snorkel or a straw in the water, connecting the brain to the radio waves. In a way, maybe brain, it was a heart to the radio waves. Jesus Christ, this analogy is just breaking apart. But the radio waves, the heart could hear the radio waves, but the radio waves could also probably hear the heart beating. There you go, analogy. And it just becomes this sort of like two different ideas, two different concepts, humanity and entities, different language, human, inhuman, being able to understand each other, causing the messages being read out weird, and affecting the medium of the message, aka Herschmidt's brain just, you know? So that's what I'm understanding it as. So there's a lot here. Just focusing down on just what is in the text itself. Calling out for help, the need to get out, reflects to me the need slash want for like rituals. Like I mean, who was it? Simon Fairchild told Martin in, was it 151 Big Picture, 150 Big Picture, 150 or 151 Big Picture is one of those two. Talking about how it's like a song that hear in the dreams. Oh my god, a song that you hear in your dreams, aka radio waves above the ocean. Interesting. Whatever. A song that you hear in your dreams that you try to recreate without being able to have any music or something like that. That's what is, oh my god, that's what it sounds like to me that not Herr Hans Berger experienced. And the help reflects pain to me, the way it's the way that it's said and described, the way that it's been written out, the way that the messages are getting sent. It feels like it's trying to get sympathy, but then again, could just be entity that does not know how to communicate suddenly being able to communicate, could just make it sound like that accidentally. So yeah, it's a lot. Basically, Hansberger talked to the entities, and that killed Herr Schmidt, because the entities are not there. It's not possible to do that sustainably. So we shall see what comes out of that. Which is why I say there's no entities manifesting here, but they're talking to all of them, or at least one fear. Back to the mundane stuff. Alice and Sam seem to have broken up in the past because Alice was being controlling. And Celia seems to have been waiting until Sam and Alice had a bigger rift between each other, probably to make sure that Alice isn't dragged in and it's just Sam or whatever. Because I don't believe one bit that Celia just found these names. I don't believe that. I think she was waiting. I think that Celia Ripley knows John and Martin. And she was just waiting until Sam was all the way in to reveal the names. because she wasn't sure exactly what because he was, yeah, Sam was sort of like hedging around him wanting to investigate the Magnus Institute, and I'm not sure if she knew that he went to the ruins to investigate. But he was definitely like after that hedging around. He wasn't sure if he wanted to or not. And after Alice's fight, then he was like, actually, I'm in. I'm in. I don't care. And then Celia was like, okay, I got to see if I trust this guy. And he's proven himself, and this is important to what I'm doing. This is me being Celia, but I don't know what Celia wants. But yeah, that's what Celia probably thinking. And yeah, she was just waiting until he was all in, which is like, well, he's in now. I'm gonna like backtrack a bit. Sam's insistence that Alice is just a jealous ex is egotism. Very egotistical, and it's as if he can't believe that she could feel anything else about him. You know, like Alice, I feel does truly feel concerned about Sam's well-being, but Sam only sees her as a past entanglement, and that to me makes is very childish of him. You know, with him like being this sort of like person who's like really interested in institute and everything, and then like Alice is telling him like, hey, you need to like be safe. He's like, hey, okay, just because I'm dating Celia doesn't mean you get to be like this. And she's like, I'm not. It's not that. It's she actually does care for him, and he does not see that. He just sees her as a past entanglement. Which Jesus, Sam, Alice almost says that if Sam was like cool with everything, they could do something together, but she doesn't say exactly what. And I have never really gotten the sense that Alice had any ulterior motives, but I did get a sense that she knew what she was doing, quote unquote, and knew how she was carrying herself. And to me, this sort of reveals Alice is smarter than we think. She's smarter than she lets on. I mean, I was just re-listening to episode, what was it, 10 Saturday night. And when she and Sam are in the ruins, I just found it very funny. She was very quick on her feet, making jokes and stuff like that. But she knows what to say. Oh my God. She knows what to say to get what she wants. Sounds very similar to someone we knew before. Alice, I'm not saying she's manipulating anybody. I'm just saying that Alice is controlling how she carries herself. She plays this like sarcastic know-it-all, not even know-it-all, just sarcastic, sardonic person to one hide that she doesn't like what she's doing. Like she's talked about before that she doesn't like working for the government, and two, she like those things happen. She's talked about people going crazy before. She's seen Colin go crazy. She's seeing Gwen lose some marbles of her, and she was worried about Sam, and like she is smarter than she thinks. No, she knows that she's smarter than we think she is. And I don't think she's manipulating anyone. I just think that she's trying to survive. And at this moment, her and Sam break off further and further. And I still think that there's a bigger argument to be had later. But they're starting to break away further and further as she is just like, I need to have control of my life, which is why she's acting like this. And Sam is going to lose control because he's searching for more. Oh my God, the parallels of I'm just going to say it, of Alice and Martin, and then John and Sam. Oh my God. Oh my God, guys, the parallels. And yeah, I mean that's the end of my notes. That's the end of this episode. I can't wait to see what happens next. Yeah, this is a pretty good episode. Yeah. Okay, so I shall see you for episode 23. So yes, just laying it all on the table. Truthfully, I didn't really like this episode, so I'm not gonna like linger too much on it. I'll linger as much as I wanted to, but I didn't really like this episode, unfortunately. And I mean, I'll talk about why, but that's not as important for like the mystery of it. So, episode 23, A New You, CAT13RBC3536. The description is transformation, parentheses, dysmorphic, dash slash dash, doppelganger, parentheses, infection. It is category 1 and 3, which means it is an agent, A.L. Newman, and a catalyst, which is the coral. It is rank BC. Death 3, pain 5, helplessness 3, weird 6. The date of the event happened June 20th, 2018, and the date of the catalogization is April 18th, 2024. The author of this case is Harlan Guthrie, who is, if not the head writer, a main writer in the podcast Malevolent, which is in the circle of like podcast fandoms that people enjoy that include the Magnus archives. This aired July 25th, 2024. Brief summary: woman replaces herself with coral. Any possible entities are corruption or flesh or stranger or I don't know what else. This one's kind of hard. So in scene 1, Lena asks Sam why he's doing response forms. And Lena thinks that Alice is messing with Sam. She says it's some sort of like initiation rite. And Sam is like, I'm fine with that. I'm just going to keep doing it. Sam's filling out the forms while he's off the clock, which is like the response forms that we've seen him fill out before, the ones that asked him like weird personal questions. We don't know where they're coming from. It seems that they keep coming, and so definitely that's gearing up towards something. Don't know what yet. In scene 2, Chester / John reads out a forum thread about, quote, finding your peace, Piece, and the forum thread was written by Alessis Newman, and she was basically documenting about finding her, quote unquote, peace, Piece, to help her better her own life, and she eventually finds it in a fish tank in a restaurant she used to go to with her maybe dead boyfriend Anthony, and the thing that she finds is coral. Like for some time, it just says it in the thing, and eventually she just says it's coral, which makes sense because it was in a tank. But like, I guess she has dreams of seeing, quote unquote, her across the aquarium, and she's getting ready to like do something with the coral, and she's getting helped by one or two like forum members there. One of them is just telling her how to do it, and so she eventually just cuts into her thigh, and puts the coral into her thigh, and after a few weeks, she just starts losing feeling in her legs. She begins to just lose feeling all throughout her body. One night, the skin on her thigh like splits open, and coral polyps begin like growing out of her. And she has another dream and sees, quote unquote, her in her dream again, and she has her eyes. The her that she sees in a dream has Alessa's eyes. Eventually, her stomach opens and she feels afraid of the future. She feels weaker and weaker. And at the end, she says that she's here, her replacement. Alessis is eventually just beginning to lose her entire like movement in her body. And the last post is her saying that there's something wrong with the new Alessis. What it is, don't know. Just ends that way. And yeah. In scene 3, Celia and Sam talk about the names that they mentioned prior. Jonathan Sims and Martin Blackwood. It's funny that it's just Martin Blackwood because I keep thinking of it as Martin K. Blackwood. But anyways, they died separately over 20 years ago. And it says that like Sims died by cycling and Blackwood died by a heart condition. And there was no connection between them and the Magnus Institute. And so Sam asks Celia where she got the names, and she lies and says some old documents. And you hear the glitch in when she's saying it. So it's a full lie that she got this from some documents. Celia says that she found a Basira Hussein and Helen Richardson going and is going to talk to them with Sam. Yeah, that's honestly, I forgot that she said this because I was just lingering on the episode itself, the case. But yeah, Basira and Helen, oh god. Okay. Anyways, Gwen enters the break room. They were in the break room, and she's still like distraught from her encounter with Ink 5 and the watching figure, which is what she described as a thing with eyes, and then her demotion from Lena, and Sam and Celia more or less run away from interacting with her because they don't want to like deal with all that emotion. And while she's there in the break room, she starts crying, and Alice enters and begins to crack a joke. But when she sees that like Gwen is not good, she stops and she's like, "Do you want to talk about it?" You know, she becomes human, and I love that. I love that Alice like recognizes it, and she's like, "Okay, no joke time, no joke time. Let's solve something," you know. And Gwen tells Alice about her assignments, about Ink 5 and her tape recorder monster, quote unquote, error. And she describes error specifically as having too many eyes and holding a tape recorder. Interesting. And Alice recognizes that about the recorder because Alice saw a recorder on the ground and like picked it up and like was like, "What is this?" when she encountered the drowned woman. And so she tells Gwen that they are all in danger from the thing that watches. And that's when the episode ends. Yeah, I honestly have to say, I didn't really like this episode as much. I have never listened to any of Malevolent. I'm not saying that Harlan Guthrie is not a good writer. It's just this thing that he wrote, I wasn't a fan of, unfortunately. I'm very sorry about that. I think that the horror of it was lost because you always hear when you're writing about horror that not all the questions have to be answered, and that there is supposed to be some form of ambiguity in what you write, and that allows for your imagination to go. However, for me, that imagination has to start from somewhere, you know, like a basis of reality. And when horror writers try to write something to make you imagine it, for example, a great example in the Magnus archives is episode 135. One of those, I forget what it's called. Time of Revelations. The one that Martin reads out about a letter from Adelar Decker to Gertrude, and he's talking about a woman who goes and finds a like professor's apartment and finds an entrance into the extinction, or like an extinction like manifestation. And he's like, I was not able to get her to describe the things that were left behind in that wasteland. That leaves your imagination to thinking of like, what could that be? You know, another great example is episode 99, Dust to Dust, when it's a Gertrude reading out a statement of Robert E. Geiger about the Dust Bowl, and in one of the descriptions, she says that it's stated that Seven Brutchen died, and he would know that because he could not be making those sounds if his body wasn't fully packed with mud and dust. And it doesn't describe how the sounds are like. Just describes how he tries to talk, but does not describe the sounds. And that makes us try to imagine what the sounds are like. And the thing is, when you're trying to have this sort of like, the reader's imagination is always going to be scarier than what you show, which is why a lot of times you don't show the monster until like later on. When you do that, you have to base it off of something that we already know about, right? When she says that she sees her piece in the tank and she wants to put it in her body, and she keeps saying it and the piece, I have more questions, and these questions tend to back up against each other. Like, first of all, what does it mean when she says your piece? because when I was listening to it, obviously there's a moment where she says she's in a bathroom, and she's like repeating a mantra or whatever, find your peace, find your peace. And the woman asked her if she's meditating. She's like, that's ironic. It's almost like I am finding my peace, Peace, but no, it's Piece. And so that begins with the question of like, what does that mean? What is this forum for? And then what is the thing in the tank? What are the people saying? What are the comments saying? How is this all working together? And it's just everything begins to back up and back up. And I don't need answers, but I need a basis as to what the reality is. And then the horror will come when you subvert that reality. So for example, if you say your piece, if they describe that your piece is the thing that will make you whole again. For example, this person, like she gave two examples of two people who were in the forum with her. I'm going to put this down. She gave two examples of people who were in the forum with her. And it would help a lot if one of them was able to describe what their piece was. For example, my piece was my notebook that I get to write in a lot about. Or my piece was this seed that I found that I planted in my garden and helped me make myself better. And then when she gets a little, I don't know, maybe she's losing her mind a bit because of the coral and thinks that to make herself feel whole, she has to put it in her body. Then you have some horror there. Then you have some answers that and the reality basing the reality in what's it, putting the reality down onto the page and then subverting that for the horror. And so for me, I didn't really like this part. I didn't really like it when she was like, oh yeah, just put it in my body and now she's growing out of me. I can understand her body losing function. That makes sense. And the visceral, I will admit that the like very visceral descriptions of her body breaking open were amazing. That was really fun. That was great moments of gore. And so I really enjoyed that part. But as to like the why, that really was just lost for me. And I didn't really enjoy it, unfortunately, and I'm very sorry about that. But yeah, I just didn't enjoy it as much. Anyways, notes. To begin with, Lena doesn't know about the response department papers. She doesn't know that they're being sent in, so there's some form of like, I assume that she has some sort of oversight with the computers and stuff and seeing the caseloads and stuff. She doesn't see that the response departments are being spit out by FR3D1. I always forget if it's FR3-D1 or FR3D-1. Freddy, FR3D1. Meaning the response departments are from Freddy, or at least not an internal person. And like I've always had the theory that the response departments are John Sims, and I guess Martin, trapped in the computers trying to gain enough fear from the weird questions being given out from Sam to grow enough power to become more powerful or something like that. That makes a little bit more sense, but obviously we don't know anything about the response departments yet. That's what my theory is. Finding your peace entity. Question mark, question mark, question mark. There's some, so this is the corruption, infection. There's things about the infection and sickness there. However, she doesn't have that much fear about it. So that one's a little looser for me. And in terms of like everything else around the motifs of corruption, they don't appear. The flesh, something about like finding your a better body or something like that, is also very loose connection there because of the motifs we've seen of the flesh. And it may be stranger because she's replacing her own body with someone else. And at the very end, she's like, oh no, something wrong, wrong people being replaced or something like that. However, I can't really think of any other examples or like entities to connect it to this episode. It's very difficult for me to like find one, you know. Celia's lying about the source of names to Sam. There's glitching in the recording. But you could easily say that there are two conclusions from this. One, she got the names by her own like knowing, like she already knew the names. Obviously, like Celia knows who John Sims and Martin K. Blackwood is. Sorry, Martin Blackwood. She already knows who they are, and so she just gave the names to Sam just to like start his investigation. But also another reading of it, I have to be truthful, Could be that she's lying about specifically old documents. It could be that she found something pretty big and is hiding it from Sam. I think 100% that she already knew the name, so she just gave it to Sam. She just told Sam and just said to lie about the old documents. But yes, actually, would it even mark, because if he found some like really big documents, they would still count as old documents. I just undid my second argument. So yeah, she knew those names. Celia knows. Basira and Helen were found. To me, like some questions I have is like, when did she and Sam find those names, or where did she and Sam find those names? That's it. Because like, she didn't say those after, like she said, John and Martin. And I like it also, like, easy assumption is that like she said Jonathan Sims, Martin Blackwood. Sam says who? Recording cuts off, and she's like, also I also found Basira Hussein and Helen Richardson, and oh yeah, hold on a second. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. Alice is ahead of Sam in terms of experiencing the horrors. She is now with Gwen talking about the current horrors of the Ink 5 and the what's it called? The thing that watches. And so yeah, she's ahead of the horrors, which is like, hey, you go, girl. So Basira and Helen, I think those are interesting names to pull out. I can 100% see Basira makes sense for names that she like pulls out. Helen is also an interesting name because if you remember, I forget if it was 190 Scavengers or 191 the things we lost. Georgie and Melanie both say that Helen appeared and tried to eat Celia. And so that was definitely, that's her saying that name is interesting. It's interesting that she did not say Melanie King, because that maybe she didn't want to say Melanie King's name because she knew that Melanie was dating Basira, was dating Georgie, because she knows Georgie's there. Oh my God. I didn't even think of this until now. Whatever. Yeah, interesting names, and I can't wait till I hear both of those women, like, I don't know, at the same time, or just separate scenes or whatever. Frank Voss and Imogen Harris are amazing voice actors, and I love them so much. And what else was it? Oh yeah, there's some connections here in terms of the language written of the things that appear in the case. There are descriptions of polyps and things growing in your body, right? That connects to me to episode 3, Putting Down Roots, with the tree and the guy who turns into tree. What's his name? Weber. And then episode Hard Reset 17? No. Episode 19. That's it. Both of them had descriptions of polyps or tentacle things growing out of you. The language is very similar, in terms of how it's described. However, the depictions of it slightly differ, but because of its originating within you, within your body, aka the tree dug into Weber and then it grew out of him. But the dog, the evil dog, what the dog do, had things growing out of him. And so they're putting something into your body and then having it grow out of it and have something bad happen to you. None of those two first examples had a copy of the person appear, but we didn't get that far because Weber died, and the dog was stopped from growing more of the Diana's tree. And so I'm just noting the distinctions there and the similarities, but I am still not sure as to what it all means. I didn't really like this episode, but I can't wait to see Basira and Helen here with us again. And I'll see you soon for episode 24. All right, enough of that negativity. Let's continue with something that is a lot more positive. I don't know if you can notice here, I forgot to mention last time, but I did get a new book to my collection of the best books I've ever read ever. Element OP. Let me flip it. There we go. It's really good. It's about island nation whose like famous person there was the person who created the phrase "the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which holds all 26 letters, and they have a statue commemorating him. And one of the every like once in a while a letter falls off, and so they declare that the letter does not exist anymore in the alphabet, and so that makes the letters written between this girl Ella, her name's Ella Minopi, the letter between her and her family just evolve as the letters start falling off, and they have to try different ways to write text. And yeah, I mean, I loved it so much, and I added to this here. So she is basically just interviewing them. Did I? This is also Dory. I forgot to say. I forgot what food she is. It's munchable. I bought it for my boyfriend. Bought it for my boyfriend when we were at Disney recently. Um, it's a munchling. Sorry. I believe she's some sort of sandwich. And yeah, so new episode came out today, and this is the last episode of the 4 before I send the video out to YouTube. And I really like making these videos a lot, so it helps me like contain a lot more in my brain. It does get a little muddled in terms of the things that happened in the last few episodes, because I'm editing it and like everything going on top of each other. But it's really helpful for me to like figure out what's happening in the world. So, episode 24, Raising Issues, CAT1RBC1375, and the dates. The description is baby, parentheses, demonic, dash slash dash, delusion, parentheses, exhaustion. Category 1 is an agent. For that, I'm going to put Rupert, and it is rank BC. DPHW, death 1, pain 3, helpness 7, weird 5. The date of the event was February 29th, 2024, and the date of the catalogization is April 23rd, 2024. The author of this case is Alex Tillander, who is also the head writer of the Ostium podcast. This aired August 1st, 2024. I can't believe it's already August. It feels like it's moved so quickly. And also so slowly at the same time, I have to be honest about that. Brief summary: Demon Baby plus Basira. And the possible entities are the Flesh and Spiral. In scene 1, we find Gwen entering Lena's office, and she's demanding another chance. She's asking a chance to earn being an externals liaison. And Lena's like, what gives you the right to come in here and demand it? She's like, I want to earn it. When she's asked truthfully why she wants to keep doing it despite everything that has happened prior, Gwen says she would prefer to be on the inside, as it'll protect her than not. Like Lena's like, so you think it's gonna be more dangerous if you quit? And Gwen's like, isn't it more dangerous if I quit? Lena, the person who knows more. And Lena is like, okay, listen. There's going to be a new minister visiting. We've heard this since last episode. And if you help, she tells, if you help me, Lena, in, quote, humoring him and expediting his departure, then she'll talk with her about her position. And Gwen leaves, and like when she's leaving, Lena specifically says, can you close the door better when you leave? So that is odd, not like weirdly odd, but something that I noted that I will talk about later. But yes, she leaves, and Lena is a little frustrated with how things are going. In scene 2, Norris/Martin reads out a nap safe recordings. So he reads out recording 1 ends, recording 2 ends. Doesn't add much to the story there. And the recordings are of Patricia Spalding, whose voice actress is Faye Durham. And it's her talking about her raising her child, Rupert. In the first recording, she talks about her son Rupert, about not remembering the birth or pregnancy very well, which is why she's recording it on the baby cam. She talks about how he has dark black eyes, and she's like, eventually he'll get the eye color will settle, something like that. And she says she's not getting enough sleep because, well, she's raising a child, and that will generally happen. And she notes that she was told that he will need to eat every 4 hours, but she finds that he's eating a lot more than usual, more frequently, and that's part of the reason why she's not sleeping that much. In the second recording, she says she's hearing things, non-human sounds like dog barks or something like that, growls, and usually when Rupert is alone. And so she has that sort of like worry that there's something out for her baby, maybe. And she mentions that she's in a mom's support group, and there's a Celia there who's very kind and Rupert likes a lot. Which, hello. And she also mentions needing bandages and how the women there, the mothers there, judge her for needing bandages. And she doesn't really explain bandages yet, because when I first heard that, I thought she meant like bandages for her stomach when she was giving birth, in terms of like maybe like a C-section or complications after the pregnancy. So that's what I expected when I first heard this. And we continue with the third recording, and she says she's tired from childcare. She hasn't been sleeping or going to the support group anymore. It's too much of a hassle to pack everything up for the baby and go to the support group. Rupert is constantly eating, and there's a point where he got blood on him, and she's like, "Oh, he's so cute." And throughout it all, there seems to be sounds of like the transcript said like slurping sounds like from a straw, which I didn't really get that when I heard, but it was definitely something odd and sounded like an animal in a way, like a dog to me. And so it was very creepy there. And then the fourth recording, Rupert is eating at her. Like, we hear it a lot more. And it sounds like animalistic, animal-like sounds as Rupert is eating. And so here it was very much like, oh, bandages for you know but now it's like, okay, bandages for the breast that is for feeding the milk, because she also mentions, I believe it was in the second or first or second, no, this is the second one, that he didn't accept anything that wasn't breast milk. And the bandages now could also be in terms of whatever else he's eating from her. She doesn't explain exactly what it is, but yeah, in this fourth recording, she is definitely feeding Rupert more than he should of herself. At one point, she thinks that she sees a shadow that's wrong, but she turns on the light. It's just Rupert who's just sitting up. And Rupert there's a very distinct sound, and it sounds like Rupert's is wanting for more food. And I forgot where it is and which recording it is, but she says, "Oh, do you want the arm now? Okay." And which is really fun, actually. That And then the fifth recording, her mind is fully lost. So she's like, it's dark. I'm not like, she's not present in the moment. She's not present in the moment. No, is she? She's kind of not lost, it's per se, but she's getting weak from the blood loss, from the body loss, and she's finding it hard to like think in the recording. And Rupert is fully just feeding on her body. Like, we can hear it munching. And she says that she's scared. And there's different interpretations that I can take from that. My biggest interpretation is that she's scared that she will be fully consumed. But she follows it up with, but she's happy that Rupert will be fed. And so part of that fear might be obviously of being consumed, but also fear that she won't be enough. Especially when she says that she's happy that he's being fed. There could be an implication there that she's afraid that she won't be enough for him. And there's multiple different like ideas here in terms of cannibalism, and I'll get into it a bit more in my notes section. But yeah, it was predictable, especially when it was demonic baby, and it was interesting listening to it, reading it, the transcript, and I liked it a lot. I liked this episode a lot, this case a lot, compared to last episode, at least. In scene 3, Celia and Sam are getting ready to leave the OIR for the night, and Alice stops them, and she says that she doesn't think that they should should go. They shouldn't go to where they're going. I don't think she knows where they're going, but she says they shouldn't go to do their investigation. And Sam's very exasperated. He's like, this again, you know. But like Celia asked her to continue, like, go on. She asked her why she thinks this, and Alice says that Gwen is not okay, and that the externals are after them. You know, this is a few days after the conversation between Gwen and Alice last episode, when they learned that the externals are externaling, and she's trying to act upon this. And Celia believes her, and Sam's like, what? This tape recorder VHS? What? This is just weird. And Celia's like, okay, maybe it's true, Sam. I mean, the things that we've been hearing in the cases, doesn't this sound plausible? And he's like, yeah, I guess. He says it with like hard eyes in his eyes. And Sam asks what he should do instead, if not to do this. And Alice is like, I don't really know, but just don't do that. And they almost begin to like argue again, but this seems less charged arguing and more like just frustration arguing. And Celia mediates between them. And she says, okay, listen, we must do something. We need to, ignorance isn't going to keep them safe. But, so that's, you know, for Sam's side. And then she says, but we also means that they must work together to keep everyone safe, which is what Alice wants, because Alice wants to keep everyone safe. And so both of them are sort of satiated in this moment. They're like, fine. And when she says to everyone should work together, it feels like she's saying it to Sam. And Sam's like, okay. And then Alice is like, that's good. That's kind of what I wanted, just to keep everyone safe. And as they leave, Alice asks Celia to keep Sam safe because she worries for him. And scene 4, Sam and Celia pretend to be Mr. and Mrs. Fisher, going to enroll their son Humphrey into St. Luke's, and they're getting an interview by none other than the deputy head, which is like vice principal maybe, of St. Luke's, who is Basira Hussein, voiced by Frank Voss, and that's pretty exciting. Sam and Celia are pretending to be husband and wife, and so they're talking with her, and throughout it all, sort of like asking leading questions, and they're like, well, we want to get to know people who work here, and Sam asked a leading question about Basira's career background, and Basira names some accolades, and she begins to bristle at the implications, because he's asking more and more about her like credentials. And to anyone else, and to Basira herself, who is a person of color, it could be assumed that he is doubting her like credentials as a woman and as a person of color, because she is of Arabic descent, which is funny because also Sam is of Indian descent, and so him being her thinking that he's being racist is also like, ooh, interesting, but whatever. She's getting pretty uncomfortable and angry at his implications, but Sam's a little stupid, and he's just asking questions for the mystery and is not thinking about the implications of such. Sam asks about the Magnus Institute, and that sort of like throws her off in a bit, and she's like, I don't know what that is. She's never heard of it, and it's not a lie. We don't hear a glitch here, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we don't hear a glitch here. And after that, Celia asked if she was ever working with the police, and that also throws Sam off. He's like, that's a good question. Why are you asking about that? And like Basira also says she never worked with the police either. And after that, she's like, okay, great. Time is up now. Leave. And they do. And after they're escorted out, Sam asks Celia why she asked about the police. And she lies again. We hear a very distinct glitch in the recording, and says that she may have just read it in the files. And then the episode ends there. A lot of things here, great things. Notes. So I believe there is some sort of plan between Alice and Gwen to keep everyone safe. It's not like big secret plan, but like they talk together about Ink and the watching figure, and so it's very easy assumption to be like, okay, we're gonna try to help everyone get better, be safe. And so I believe that someone, maybe Alice, may have been listening when Gwen didn't close the door properly when she entered, because there's distinct mention by Lena of her closing the door when she leaves. So she comes in, talks with Lena. Lena dismisses her and she says, "Okay, and close the door properly when you leave." That implies that she didn't close the door properly when she came in, and that implies that Gwen did that on purpose. And to me, that all means something. That sounds like Alice was listening, or someone. Most likely, Alice was listening. Will that come to something? I don't know. I think it's a great detail. I think it's an interesting detail, especially because we had Alice and Gwen talking to each other before, and so it's a really good detail to have there that I'm like pointing out. The new minister. Ministers are not a thing within the United States, which is where I live. And so I mean, I know what a minister is, but I just looked it up just in case. And it is a member of the UK cabinet, which is like the people who advise the prime minister. She only said it as Lena only called him, because she also used pronouns, as the new minister. And so I don't believe it's a new prime minister, because she would probably say the prime minister. So just a minister, someone of the government. And so he's likely part of the funding or oversight, one of those two likely. And Lena wants to hide what the OIAR is doing, or at least make sure he doesn't linger. And he's probably very mundane, because she says to Gwen, "I want to make sure that he is satiated, and leaves quickly." And so it might be that she wants to make sure he doesn't interfere with day-to-day workings. Maybe she doesn't want him to know what they're doing, doesn't want him to ask other people questions. He's most likely a very mundane person. This is a very mundane thing happening, but because of the supernatural things that they're doing in the OIAR, he probably doesn't know about that and probably don't want him to know about that. And that's why Lena was like, "Hey, Gwen, you help me make sure he doesn't do any problems with my OIAR, and then maybe I'll start giving you more external liaison assignments." And I can totally see the visit of the minister as part of the end of the season. If he comes the next episode, then that's fine. But I think the new minister, if he's someone important that we know before, maybe it's Peter Lucas now. I don't know. I can see this being like end of season thing happen, changes happen, etc. Not sure. It's definitely leading up to something, because this is the second time the ministerial visit has been mentioned, and so that's definitely something of note. So the entity of the case is toss up between the two of flesh or the spiral. For the spiral, there obviously talked about delusion and exhaustion, and lack of sleep and hearing noises. That tends to be spiral stuff. We saw this in episode 74 fatigue. That might be wrong, but 74 fatigue, we had a woman who was not sleeping well, and she had like delusions and hallucinations. Michael the Distortion was there. Very spiral stuff happening in that episode. But yes, that has similar things happening here. But I think it's mainly the flesh, because there's cannibalism and there's animalistic sounds. Her body's being eaten, and this is it's a flesh baby. The baby that's a flesh. It says demonic, and throughout the Magnus archives, there hasn't been many like what's it called, Catholic Christian ideation. Is that the word? The symbolism imagery beyond Father Burroughs. John and Martin even talk about in season 5 how like is religion a thing Is that all, like, is there really a God or Jesus or whatever? And John was like, it's true up to the point that people need it to be, which is a vague non-answer, which is, I like that answer a lot. And so, like, the demonic thing, quote unquote, for the baby is definitely, different than what we usually see, but it makes, you could call the flesh pig demonic pig. So, flesh baby. Also, they made great sound design for Rupert's, like, I liked it a lot. And it was creepy. It was definitely creepy when I was hearing it. I was like, oh god, what is that? Celia is there's a Celia in a support group. And I think it's the same Celia that's in the YAR, especially because Jack is also a baby, and makes sense that she would be in a support group. Why this was mentioned, not sure, but especially because it was also happened in February, which is 2 months ago, because they're in April, right? Yeah, like this was 2 months ago, and so like that's the same Celia, but why? Yeah, it's a little confusing because so this was written by Alex Telander, but it was edited by Johnny Sims and Martin K. Blackwood, and we saw with Harlan Guthrie's, he publicly stated that the ending was changed by the Rusty Quill crew to fit more with the tone of the story, which I think his ending felt a lot better with what was leading to it. And so I can totally see them changing adding in the name of Celia, adding in someone who's there just to mean something. I don't know what it means yet, but it's there. Alice attempts to stay aligned with Sam despite their arguments, but Sam is still being very immature about it. I think that Alice is a very complex character, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but like Alice is trying to, help everyone, but Sam is very egotistical about himself, and it's like he thinks that Alice is only doing this because she's still into him, and then like he thinks that she thinks that he's crazy, and he's just acting very, very immature around her and about her, and Alice is acting very scared and frustrated, especially because she feels this immaturity from him. And I feel this immaturity from him. Celia is encouraging them working together, and she's mediating between both of them, which I like a lot because there was a little tingle of something in my brain that was like Celia was waiting for Sam and Alice to break apart, and that felt a little malicious to me. That felt a little bit of intent, but she is making sure that Alice and Sam are working together and not fighting. And to me, that just means that Celia is just adapting to the situation. And it's not like she didn't want Alice with them in the before, but it's definitely very much like if Alice is gonna be in conflict with what Celia and Sam wanted to do, then Celia was going to help like push that away. But now that Alice is not in conflict with Sam and what Sam and Celia want to do, then she's like, okay, great, we have to work together. That feels like very smart leadership, very smart, like person, agent doing something sneaky, cause Celia. There's a mention here, obviously, that ignorance is not going to help them, and ignorance helping / not helping people was a theme that came up before, specifically with Martin and Tim when they're talking about how like John was trying to keep them in the dark, and Tim was like, that didn't help us against Michael Distortion. And the question of would them have knowing about Michael Distortion have helped them in that situation at the end of season 2? We don't really know. But here they're doing active steps to not be ignorant as to what is happening. And in regards to things that they're trying to figure out, Basira herself is very different than the Magnus Archives Basira that we grew to love. She's my favorite character in the Magnus Archives. In the Magnus Archives, we didn't really get any story as to why Basira began police work in her life. We got how she got into Section 31. We also got how Daisy began police work, and then how Daisy got into Section 31. But we didn't get how Basira got into police work at all. And there's nothing to compare here. There's also, she mentions how she was raised by 2 academics, which does not conflict with what she said before about her family. She's only mentioned her father in episode 117 Testament, and how he just talked about not complaining about stuff. But she never talked a lot about her family at all, so I don't know anything about her family. And now we just find out that they're academics. So there's nothing to compare here between what happened to Basira in Magnus Archives and what's happening to Basira in Magnus Protocol. Besides, we know it all to be true. There's no glitches when Basira spoke. Everything she said was true. So it's definitely interesting to see that the difference of Basira in Archives is vast from the Basira in Protocol. And so it seems like what we've seen with Gigi and Jerry Key, and now Basira, their lives are vastly different from the Magnus Institute or Magnus Archives world. However, Gigi and Jerry are still adjacent to the Magnus Institute, while Basira herself is not. And like, if we take for face value that John and Martin did die 20 years ago, if we take that by face value that they are not connected to the Magnus Institute at all, that is also very interesting. But these two different groups of people, Gigi and Jerry, and Basira, John, and Martin, not being connected to the Institute, being adjacent to the Institute, there's something happening here that they're trying to tell us, but I don't know what it is yet. But yeah, I'm just happy that I got to see Basira. Celia is lying again about the source of her information. And that is very interesting, obviously, that she keeps lying to Sam about how she knows stuff. Because she mentioned police stuff to Basira. And obviously she knows that Basir Hussein in the Magnus Archives was part of Section 31. And so she was trying to see if there was anything about Section 31, the police, regarding Basira's past in Protocol. But she's not telling Sam why she thinks about this. And Sam is so lovey-dovey about Celia that he just accepts that she might have read it in a file. And I'm like, dude, ask about the files. Ask about what you found. Ask to read it, just to get like a second perspective about it. But no, he just trusts her blindly. And I'm not saying you shouldn't trust Celia blindly. I'm just saying that Sam is very immature about what he's doing. And he's just rushing in head first without all the information. So Sam's going to get hurt by his immaturity. And I can't wait to see that. No one reacted to the case. And different episodes, it's very rare that we have a reaction from someone within the OIAR. A handful of times, it's like just one person sort of like, okay, let's go, let's keep going, and we got no reaction to this case. So I don't know who heard this case, especially because there was a mention of Celia. Like, if Sam heard this case and heard the Celia there, he would say, hey, Celia, someone mentioned you in a case, or is this you? Do you know this woman? Or if Alice heard, she'd do the same thing. If Gwen heard, she'd be like, that's interesting, that's scary. But no one said anything about this, and that felt weird. If none of the three main characters heard this case, who did? Unless it's just playing to be played, which I don't really like. If there's someone else who's listening to these cases, they didn't say anything about Celia, that is something interesting. But if it's just being listened to, being played to us, the audience, just to play it, I don't like it. What I'm missing from the Magnus Protocol is the after case investigations. The where are they nows. Like, a lot of, not a lot, but like a portion of the most horrifying moments or most creepy moments in the Magnus Archives were when John was talking about the investigations his team was doing after the fact. For example, 32 Piecemeal with Lee Rentoul and Paul Noriga, and how Tim goes to look at the boxes, or look at the apartments, and the landlord said he just left what was it? Lee Rentoul left a bunch of cardboard boxes, and it's implying that are all of his body parts. That was terrifying to me. In episode 32, Boneswain's Call, John talks about how there was a washed up dead body of the guy who went missing on Peter Lucas's boat, and how he died 2 weeks ago, but he's been missing for 6 weeks, which implies that he was stuck in the lonely for that long. Or just like the mundane sort of things, like episode 114, Cracked Foundations, where he's like, yeah, for all intents and purposes, Anya Villette does not exist. But the people mentioned do exist, and we can't find her anymore. But for all intents and purposes, she doesn't exist. Or what was it? 85 upon the stairs. The person who took there was a note that the person who took the statement, Eric Delano, doesn't remember having the statement being taken. And so a good portion of the creepy horror for me happens after the case as well. And yeah, the statements are really fun and really scary, and the things that happen there are horrifying. But then the after investigation, I enjoyed a lot, and I'm missing from that here, because especially because, like, if we go through like just a handful of the episodes, like putting down roots, would they have found, if John and his people would investigate, would they have found his body? Would they have found had an interview with Officer Jennings or whatever? Or for episode 8, Running on Empty, probably trying to get another talk with the guy, what was his face? Yeah, it's just Terrence Stevens saying like what happened with him, and like after he fell out of the service station. Or let's do something more recently, episode 23, I Knew You, maybe a follow-up on Alessis Newman, and talking to a woman who says she is Alessis Newman, and she's like, that's very odd that was documented, because I was never on any forum. That would have been creepy, that would have been fun. I'm missing that from this show, and I'm just now realizing that I want that as part of the charm for Magnus Archives. Now, I'm not saying that's a negative towards Protocol, that's just what I'm missing from the sequel series. I think what they're doing so far is pretty good, but yeah, I'm missing that part of this writing, especially because I know that Johnny Sims and Alexander J. Newell could do that implication horror really, really good. Alice is a very complex character. I love her so much. I think that she's becoming my favorite character in Magnus Protocol, because she's a very complex character. Let me put this down. And she wants everyone to be safe. And I've said this before, how she has been putting on this persona of like jokey, sarcastic person, witty, because she's not, one, she doesn't like what she's doing in the OIR, and two, she does believe that bad things can happen to people if you are not careful in the OIR. She saw what happened to Colin. She saw what happened to Gwen. She's seeing what's happening to Sam. And now that Gwen told her, like, hey, things are real, she is like, okay, we gotta get together and do stuff about it. And Sam is being a whiny little boy about it. And she's like, dude, we need to talk. We need to get together. We need to do stuff. But he is not letting that happen. She has shed her personality of her I don't want to say it's a fake personality, but shed her barriers of jokey, funny girl. She's still trying to, still has that like wit upon her, but she knows that she has to buckle down and do something about what's happening. And I love that about her, that like everything that she was doesn't change, she just shifts it over. And I absolutely adore what's happening to Alice's character here, and I can't wait until she does more with it, especially because she talked with Gwen. Finally, they're talking to each other. Finally, there's no lack of communication between each other. And I want to see where Alice takes her character to help the people around her. I love Alice so much. And yeah, that was this episode of the Magnus Protocol. All 4 episodes recorded, edited, ready. And yeah, I will see you all for the next 4 episodes. Next 4 episodes will be 25 to 28. And then I'll have 29 and 30, considering that 29 and 30 are probably going to be really heavy packed episodes because it's the finale of the season. That'll be one whole video. And then, so there's 2 more videos before the end of the season. So I can't wait. Thank you very much. If you got to this point, thank you very much for going on this journey with me, following my ramblings and my red tape conspiracies. And I cannot wait to see what happens in the next following episodes. So I'll see you then.